On this video, we're going to be talking about the A or AV setting on your camera, which is also called the aperture priority mode. What this setting will do for you is allow you to have still blurry backgrounds, bokeh, and separation from your subject, your foreground, and your background. Now, how does this happen? Well, what the camera will do is let its light meter measure the amount of light that's coming through and automatically match it to the shutter speed that is needed to have this picture or this video properly exposed. What does it mean to be properly exposed? Overexposed, too much light, or underexposed, very little light. Now, what type of value must we choose for the aperture so that we get this blurry background we're talking about, or bokeh? Well, that depends. What are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to achieve, for example, a portrait, and you're trying to separate your subject from your foreground and your background, well, then you must choose a very small decimal number. What kind of decimal number are we talking about? f1.4, f1.8, f2.0, f2.8. As long as we choose one of these 4 decimal numbers, then we are bound to get a blurry background. However, there's one more thing I want you to be aware of. You want to take this picture, right? You're going to use these low decimal numbers. But the one thing that you need to be aware of also is to have the camera as close as possible to your subject. And you want the subject also to be as far as possible from your background. Because if you have your subject too close to the background, which is, let's say, a wall, then the separation will not be as likable as what we were looking for. So focus on having the camera as close as possible to your subject. If you're gonna put like a little foreground, also separate the foreground from the camera and have the, look at this, for example. This is gonna be the foreground. If I put the foreground right against the lens, you can still see me, but the hand becomes the foreground. How does the foreground become so blurry? Because it's too close to the lens. And this is the kind of effect we're trying to achieve. This hand could be a plant, it could be anything. Now, that's the foreground, right? I will be the subject. How do we get the background blurred? Well, I become as separate as possible from that background. Because if I were to be too close to the background, everything between myself and the background will be in focus. Another thing that I want you to be aware of is when you choose these small decimal numbers, what you're telling the camera or the lens is to open its diaphragm and let more light in. The more light that comes in, the more it will hit the sensor, and therefore you run the risk of overexposing your picture, having too much light in it. So always pay attention to these type of things to get a blurry background. Now, if we want the opposite, we don't want blur, separation, bokeh, none of that. We want everything to be in focus. Like, for example, landscape photography. How do we achieve that? We don't want small decimal numbers this time. We want bigger numbers. The bigger the number, the more it will focus on infinity and everything will be in focus. Let's say we go to the mountains and we put our tripod and our camera right in front of a beautiful tree. And at the end of this landscape, we see the mountains and we see clouds and we see everything. How do we get everything in focus? Well, simply put, we just change our aperture priority mode. We set it to 11, 14, 22. In this, what it will tell the lens or the camera to do is to close the diaphragm as much as possible so that less light comes through and everything becomes more focused. The camera in the aperture priority mode will also choose a shutter speed to match the amount of light that is coming through. As you are moving, you're playing with your aperture priority mode, less light is gonna be coming through the lens, which will probably be a little slower. So what you wanna do is definitely have your camera mounted on a tripod so you don't have to have any shake on your photo or video. Now let's look at an example of how aperture works and how it helps the depth of field become shallower or deeper. This is how they call it. Oh, that's a very shallow depth of field. What does it mean? That it's focusing on a very amount of the subject and everything else after the subject and before the subject is completely blurred. But when they say that's a deep depth of field, it means the subject, the background, the foreground, everything is in focus. That is a deep depth of field. Last thing I wanted to mention about this mode is that it will help you transition from the fully automatic mode that most people that buy a camera use to the fully manual mode that more amateur professional photographers use. Because you will be able to understand what the camera is doing with this exposure triangle, playing between aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Move this one thing, this one changes, and then you have to change this one and then that one. It's all a little formula that once you understand how the aperture works and what the camera chooses for it, then you can later learn through the next video that I will be showing you how the shutter speed priority works so that it chooses a proper aperture and ISO, and then we will focus on the ISO and what happens to these other two values. And eventually you will be free to understand the manual mode and fully utilize its advantages so that you become more creative with your photography and your video. I hope this video helped you. I hope this video was informative and you were able to take advantage of it and learn as much as possible. I suggest you keep learning, subscribe, like this video, and just follow me. Every week I will be posting more videos in regards to video and photography. It's a passion of mine and I want to share it with you and let's grow together. Thank you so much for your time, and until next time, vatos y morras, muchachas y muchachos. Ciao.